Memphis. I'm so glad to welcome so many people, and to the people on Facebook Live that I can't see. I see some faces here that haven't been with us for a while, and I am thrilled. I'm gonna sparkler, but I want to do something today that Malice in Memphis. And I talked to Joe, our speaker, about this because it's always nice to know who you're talking to. So what I'd like to do is one by one, unmute and give me one sentence about yourself. I'll give you an example. I'm Jackie Flom. I'm president of Malice in Memphis, and I currently have a novel called Justice Tomorrow on Amazon, and a novella called The Yellow Fever Revenge. Let's see, who is next? Pat Potter.
Unmute yourself.
There. Nope. Unmute again, Pat. You're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm Pat Potter, Patricia Potter, and I've been writing for about 40 years now, which shows how old I am. And have written in almost every type of, I've done mysteries, romance, suspense, historicals, a little bit of everything. And I'm still chopping along.
Don't you have a book coming out?
No, not anytime soon.
Okay. Mary, I can't see you, but can you unmute yourself? This is Mary.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Hi, my name is Mary Balsamo, and I am currently working on I think it's the fourth anthology we have.
Right.
I'm writing a story for that.
Okay. Randy McCharles.
Hello,
Hello.
I'm from Calgary, Alberta, up in Canada.
And what kind of stories do you write?
I write crime fiction and humorous fiction.
Oh, good. You will feel right at home here. Larry Hoy has a book
Oh,
out.
yes.
Hey!
Congrats.
So if that was my intro,
It was.
at our very last meeting back in way many moons ago, everybody went through and I heard a lot. I'm the Darrell Award winner. And I said at the time in 2019, I'm the Darrell Award winner for 2020. Booyah! It was the seed of this book.
Okay.
That book, yeah. So I wrote the seed for that book, did win the Darrell Award 2020 for the novelette, and Bullet for Shooter just came out as a full novel end of February, and I got a book signing next Saturday. Hope to see y'all there.
Okay. Carolyn McSparron.
Well, you know, Larry, the first liar never has a chance. I found out last week that I won the Darrell Award for last year. So I now have 2 plaques that I do not know what to do with. Since I don't believe in hanging up that stuff. One of the somebody was saying last week that she buries all of hers in the garden. Anyway, I'm Carolyn McSparron. I have got 2 Darrell Awards and some other stuff. And at this point, I'm working on editorizing some of the stuff we've got in, putting in a story. And I'd like to get started writing a book if I had an idea.
All right, Dutch, our president of Vice.
Yes, I have written some short stories that were in the anthology, and just happy to be here.
I bet.
And
Emily,
we're happy to have you.
Emily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm from Columbia, Missouri. I'm in an MFA program with Joseph, and I'm in the middle of working on my first mystery novel.
Oh, good. Yeah, good for you. Phyllis, I'm Phyllis Appleby. I'm so glad to see you. Can you unmute?
Unmute yourself.
I did. How about if you put your camera where we can see your whole face? There you go. I'm Phyllis Appleby. I'm co-founder of Malice, former past president many times over. And I am the writer, director, producer, star of Death Du Jour Mystery Theater for almost, can you believe this, guys, 25 years.
Wow.
You're kidding.
I'm also a Darrell Award winner from 2018. However, good news, I hope, met with Hilton Hotels yesterday, and they are really excited about hosting Death Du Jour here in Memphis at Hilton. So
Yay!
if it works out, who knows? Sky may be the limit. Haven't performed in 2 years, so keep me in your thoughts and prayers. I appreciate it.
All right, Jim.
I can't compete with all that. Most that strikes me right now is I'm old, not as old as Pat.
Nor me.
Or Carolyn, but close. I have a series of police procedurals, and I have a series of upper middle grade mystery, paranormal mystery.
Okay, Barbara. Christopher.
I'm Barbara Christopher. I'm the treasurer of Malice. I have been for like 10 years. I write paranormal, time travel, and mysteries, and I have a short story in every one of the anthologies.
Okay, Christo. Christo, can you hear me? No. Can anybody hear?
Unmute.
All right, let's go back.
Okay,
Russ,
can you try? Can you hear me?
mute? Yes. Now.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I'm Chris Donnell. I'm a wannabe writer. I've got one novel on Amazon, and my first short story will be in the new anthology that will be published this year. And I've still got a lot to learn. I've got no awards, I've nothing. So I'm just trying.
Good for you. Russ?
Russ Stilton. I guess I'm the secretary. Mainly just do the spreadsheet with the. I've got a book short stories on Amazon, and I do thrillers, paranormal, mystery, stuff like that. And I've got a thriller novel short or rough draft done. Working on it. Glad to be here.
All right, Dee?
I'm a registered nurse, and I'm working on a medical whodunit halfway through, and I have a short story in Lies Along the Mississippi.
Good. Richard? Richard? There. Speak.
Oops.
No.
No?
Now.
Now I can talk? Are
Speak
you
now.
sure? Okay. Well, I'm the best-selling author of the Jurgen, or I guess the Jurgen County series, Bridge Club series, Tigers on the Road. It's a set of novels about the flying tigers and prior to the Second World War. And I'm just happy to be here.
Right. Next. Barbara? Can you unmute?
Yes.
Oh,
I've already done mine.
no, the other Barbara.
Which Barbara? Oh, the other Barbara.
On the, she's on the, Barbara, can you hear me? I can't. No. There. Okay.
side of Amazon.
You keep breaking up. You have a book on Amazon because I've read it.
Thank you.
And you have a story on Amazon. No, I can't hear you. I know you're speaking, but I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But you have a story in the anthology coming up, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the one coming in
Paranormal. Okay. I'm interpreting because I don't know about you, but I can't hear her. All right, Nathan, let's try you. Nathan?
Hey, how's it going, everyone? I have been away from the group for a little while, taking care of some personal issues and personal challenges with school and work and things of that nature. So Jackie reached out to me a couple days ago and kind of jumping back into the fray, if you will. I haven't have anything that is written per se that's published or anything. I have a lot of starters. I started a lot of stories, but I haven't actually finished any yet.
Well,
so she mentioned,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm going to go ahead and try to put in a short story for this next anthem here. Try to get it turned in before the deadline of April 1st. So.
Thank you. All right, Christo, you jumped the line here. I have Lyda McPherson. I see your picture on my screen, but I don't see you. Can you unmute?
Am I unmuted?
There you go. Yes.
Hi, I'm from Southern California.
Oh, good.
Yeah, yeah, sort of. I'm currently working on book 2 in a 6-book series. Thought they were cozy mysteries, but they're starting to go in a different direction. Okay. So not cozies. And I don't know if I'll ever be published. For me right now, it's the process of writing. But
that's a good goal.
Was particularly thrilled with your guest speaker today because I've been circling poisoning somebody. And so this is quite timely. And I thank you for the broad invitation.
Oh, you're certainly welcome. Karen Sue Walker.
Another Southern California.
Oh,
yes,
hi.
Good morning. It's lovely to be here, and thank you for letting some of us crash your party. I write, I have the Bridal Shop Cozy Mysteries, a 4-book series, and upcoming Haunted Tea Room Mysteries. I'm a member of a writer group called the Killer Dames, and our motto is, we kill for fun and profit. and we cozy writers, we love poison. So that's why we're delighted to join you today. And thank you so much for having us.
You're so welcome. I see somebody, Rose Cummings. People without faces, I can't. Rose, can you unmute? Down there? Do you hear me, Rose?
Yes, I do. Sorry.
Okay.
I just had a barking dog. Sorry.
Oh, I have one of those.
Hi. I guess we're just introducing ourselves. So yeah. I am from Boston, Massachusetts. And I have just started writing mysteries, and I am planning on writing them. I'm planning on publishing in May on Amazon. I have 3 already that I'm in the process of editing. So, and a couple of them require poisoning. So, so that's why I'm here.
Oh, all right, Marilyn Bader.
Hi, I'm joining you from Victoria, BC, Canada.
Oh, good.
And thank you for the invitation. I I've been writing for a few years, unpublished because I'm too chicken to get an agent. I have 3 books in a series about a whiskey loving protagonist who solves crime. And so this is my year to screw up my courage and try and find an agent.
Good for you. Good for you. All right. Angeline. Speaking of barking dog. Angela.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Angeline. I'm a mystery writer. Primarily, I tried romance at one point in time and discovered that I didn't have the spirit for it because I ended up killing people. Took too much pleasure out of doing that. But I am the anthology co-chair. So I'm looking forward to seeing those of you who are still going to be submitting stories to us. Please get them in. We're looking forward to it. Thanks.
Okay, Martina Dalton.
Hi there. Can you see? I'm sorry, I don't have my camera on. I'm Martina. I'm from Seattle. I'm also part of the Killer Dames Cozy Mystery group. I have the Clarity Bloom Humorous Mystery series and also a YA teen psychic mystery series. And I'm working on a historical fiction cozy series.
Okay, welcome. Lucinda.
Thanks for having us.
H, that's all I know.
Hi, my name is Lucinda Harrison. I'm also part of the Killer Dames team.
Oh, good.
And I'm calling in from Northern California. And I just released my debut cozy mystery, Murder in Starry Cove. Actually, it's on pre-order. It releases in 2 days, and I'm really excited.
Good for you. And then Patricia Carter.
Hi, I'm Patricia Carter. I live in Olive Branch, and
Oh,
I
good.
join every meeting you have. I'm trying to join as a member.
Oh, good.
I write all the time. I have not published yet, but I write literary fiction and thrillers.
Wonderful.
And I'm
Well,
so happy to be here. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm welcome everyone. I'm sorry, I apologize to our speaker that this took so long, but I think it helps you know what's going on. Just so everyone knows, after we have our speaker, we're going to have a business meeting, Malice members, to talk about the anthology, marketing, some of our finances and other Malice business. So stay tuned after we hear from our speaker. And now I am absolutely thrilled. I don't think we've ever had an expert on poisoning before.
Is Lynn not going to introduce himself?
Oh, you know, I forgot. I am so sorry. Lynn, introduce yourself.
It's okay. I was just sitting here amazed that we have almost 30 people on this meeting. So it's nice to see that many people interested and from across the country. I'm Lynn Maples. I am, of course, a member of Malice, and I do the website and try to do some of the marketing. And I've been published in 2 of the anthologies, and the 5th one, I'll have a story in it. And I just had a cozy novella released in a mystery, crime, and mayhem anthology. And I'm part of the writing syndicate that Lee Cutter has put together. So I am delving into the cozy mystery realm and thoroughly enjoying it. And I'm glad everyone is here. Jackie, do you have Dr. Savage's bio available, or do you need me to read it for you?
I even printed it out old school.
Okay. Well,
All right.
got a typewriter and you got a printer. Okay.
Okay. All right. If everybody would.
You just went on mute. Jackie.
Jackie, you're muted.
How about that?
That worked.
Okay. Our guest speaker is Dr. Joseph Savage. He's board certified in emergency medicine and a fellow of the American Academy of Emergency Medicine. He is a clinical instructor of emergency medicine at Yale New Haven Health, in my old stomping grounds there in Connecticut. Prior to accepting his position at Yale, he was a flight surgeon for the International Space Program. And this is interesting, I think. While he was at NASA, his many duties included serving on space flight toxicology teams. He's a veteran and has done over 50 live round SWAT team operations and has completed 2 overseas tours. Reaching the rank of major, his honors include the U.S. Meritorious Service Medal, the Gregarian Space Medal, and the knighthood in the Hospitaller Order of St. John of Jerusalem. I know St. John of Jerusalem, I just didn't know the rest. In writing, he's currently enrolled in the MFA program in popular fiction at Emerson College in Boston. He won the International Thriller Writers Opening Sentence Contest in 2019. He's a big fan of the volunteer state. He once served on the board of directors of the Knoxville Writers Guild. And today he is going to talk to us, and I can hardly wait, on things I shouldn't tell writers about poisoning. So Dr. Savage, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, you have attracted a crowd.
Well, I'm glad, and I'm glad to share what I've had to learn the hard way through this. Lynn, if you could do me a favor, am I going to be able to share my screen with you? So I do have some slides because they're a lot prettier than I am.
You're good to go.
All right, so let's try that, and let's do that, and share. And are we up with the slides?
Yes, you are.
Excellent. All right, now I'm gonna have to figure out how I can scroll through these. Oh, we got it. So this is a fun topic for me. This is what you normally think of when you look at fiction and see all sorts of poisonings going on and stuff. And this is truly dramatic, and it's always a good idea. However, reality is a little different. This is what you're going to see in reality. And the coffee is not a, shall we say, untoward substance. In other words, it's one that's commonly used to hide poisons because it is such a strong flavor. It is acidic in its own nature. So it hides a lot of other flavors for poisoning or scents of poisoning in its own right. So when you go to Starbucks, just if you're a Russian agent or a U.S. counterintelligence agent, you may want to skip the coffee and just go for some clear liquid or tea, because that's how you're probably going to get your poison. All right, so the big question in poisonings is first, obviously, who the target is. Understand that in the real world, poisonings are expensive. Murder or assassinations is a fairly expensive proposition. So if it's going to be done through poison, it's actually a little bit more costly. Typically, back in the day, when I was doing other things, we had a saying called the 8-cent solution. And that was 8 cents is about what the average cost of a bullet was at that time. And that's how things were done because it was so much simpler and cheaper. And if you're working in third world countries, it's probably the best way to do that if you're going to do that kind of thing. Poisonings are a little bit more difficult, but they do have other advantages, and they were chosen even in those places for those kinds of reasons. And that is, if you don't want to actually kill someone, but just hinder them for a while. For example, there has always been a question in since Bush won of the January 92 episode where POTUS was meeting with Miyazawa, who was the prime minister of Japan. And then all of a sudden, about 8 o'clock in the evening, Bush starts this violent vomiting episode and actually passes out during dinner. And the Chinese and the North Koreans really did not want U.S. relations to improve with Japan. So there was always the question about whether or not they had somehow been involved with it. To my knowledge, it was never settled one way or the other. And if the official record is it had nothing to do with that. But the intelligence community was always worried about that. But that was a way to hinder things. They didn't want to kill him. Obviously, if you kill a standing U.S. president, there's going to be a lot more attention and issues and et cetera. So that's not what you'd want to do in that situation. The next one is straight up murder. So this is where you want to eliminate the person from their position permanently and make them disappear. But you do not want it to be known that it was that you did it, or that it was even happening through you. So this is where poisonings can really come into their own, because they are so subtle. They can be confused very easily with other things if you're not looking for them directly. And we're going to talk a lot about that in a few minutes. And so that's probably where you're going to see most of the poisoning things come in. The first two are actually the one. Now, the message one is, it can be done that way. In other words, you can do that in order to make sure that you're not only killing someone, but you're killing them in a very horrible way, so that everyone around them understands the message. And this is usually the Russian idea. And what it does is reinforces that if you leave the FSB, which is the current KGB, if you leave the FSB and try to defect to a European country, then you are going to die, and you're going to die horribly and painfully. And that's how that's typically done. So those are the big questions. And through those questions, then you choose your agent and how to do that. So let's go back and talk a little bit about the message one, because it's those are usually professional, very professional killings. And you're looking at probably the latest one that I can think of off the top of my head would be, what about, Skripal. Skripal was a double agent for the MI5 and 6, and then also for FSB in London, and he defected to London. He and his daughter were eating ice cream, and then a couple minutes later got violently sick and were ultimately found to be poisoned with Novichok agents, which we're going to talk about. The Novichok agents will go into much deeper detail, but they are absolutely a horrible way to die. They both, the brilliant doctors, recognized the poisoning, which is, to me, still, I can't imagine how they did that, but they did. And so they both didn't die immediately from that. I think Skripal actually ultimately died, but the daughter survived. So once you answer that question, you have your agent of choice. Now the question becomes, how do you handle and store that agent, and how do you procure it? The Novichok agents are, interestingly enough, banned in production by various international treaties and that sort of stuff. There's several agents. However, some of the precursors are not. And then we come into the idea now, what is a unitary versus binary poison? A binary poison is one that doesn't work very well or at all until two agents are mixed together. And as soon as they're mixed together, now you have this super poison. And the Novichok agents are exactly that. Unitary agents are agents like cyanide, which, no matter what form pretty much you're going to get it in, as long as you're handling it, it's poisonous. And that's a problem, because particularly for cyanide, it is a contact poison. And if you get enough of it on your skin, you will die. And I had a friend who was a chemical engineer who worked in a plant where that actually happened, where they were working with some pure hydrogen cyanide, liquid cyanide, in a room, and there happened to be a small rent in the hazmat suit that went unnoticed, and the cyanide got in, and the guy died from it. So that's, delivery issues are huge for a lot of poisons. Same thing with storage. If you have an agent that might leak out or otherwise be removed. And then once you have it, you have to set up the delivery of the poison. Obviously, the rule, generally speaking, is that you want to hit the target and not anyone around him. Not necessarily because you really care about anyone around him, but because of the fact that it creates a much deeper political uproar and investigation. So Skripal's murder or attempted murder is an issue where, because the daughter was involved, the international community then lent a lot of its resources into trying to track this thing down, and which made the FSB have a much bigger job in front of it. And that's exactly what you want to avoid. So that's another issue. And then finally, the cover up. Obviously, the getaway man has the delivery man has to be able to get away, have a plausible story, have an alibi. FSB is good at creating those things, or professional agents, but for civilians, it's a little bit more difficult. Now, in professional assassinations, generally there's a team of 3 that are involved in the delivery and cover-up. So the Sparrow team, for example, there's one person that's sent to kill the target. Sparrow teams are weapons assassinations team. So one person is sent to kill the target. If that person misses or is unable to, for whatever reason, unable to pull off the assassination, number 2 completes the assassination, and number 3 kills the first man. His duty is to kill the first man so that he can't tell any stories if he gets caught or whatever else. So if the guy's, even if he completely successfully gets it, but if he gets caught leaving for whatever reason, then the third man kills him so that he can't divulge his story. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Ever heard of the JFK killings? So there was always been a wonder about how Jack Ruby got involved in all this stuff. And it looks to me as a person who's kind of lived in the intelligence world for a while, and I don't want to overplay my state of being there. I was more on the periphery than in the center, but that looked very professional to me. So that's where we're at with that. So, and that was that. Let's go through this. So I've already talked about that. These are some of the ones that they have with polonium. We'll talk about that. Skripal was a good one. The use of fear. Agent characteristics. So the agent characteristics we want is detectability to the victim. So if you hand somebody a very strong smelling, sulfur is a good one, sulfur smelling drink, are they going to take it? No. Okay, they're not going to drink it in the first place. Or this smells funny, or this tastes funny, and that's what you don't want. So that's an issue with bringing the poison home to the target. Next is solubility. Back in the old days, and if you write medieval historicals, you'll see a lot was done in wine. And the answer is, well, why wine? Because it's a bipolar solvent. So in other words, it's somewhat soluble in oil, it's somewhat soluble in water, and it can bind both easily. So for homemade poisons, it was the ideal delivery vehicle. And you'll see, again, the agents we're going to talk about here in a minute, the solubility issues. And then finally, there's delivery route, and this is huge. If you can deliver something by aerosol, for example, if you can aerosolize cyanide, it takes inhaled, okay, it's 2,000 parts per million to kill someone in 30 seconds. So inhalation is very fast at delivery. It is by far the fastest way of delivery for most poisons. You can obviously ingest it, which again is the most common way to do it. And there are many poisons which are actually contact poisons. So cyanide being chief amongst them, it doesn't take very much of cyanide, but if it sits on your skin for 2 or 3 minutes even, it will kill you. And then finally, potency is king, and we're going to talk about why that is in just a minute. Okay. Cyanide is a contact poison, and we'll talk about potency now. And that is, obviously, if you have something that is not potent, you need a lot of it, which means it's going to be more detectable. It's going to be less soluble. The nice thing about potency, it gives you everything you want. It can be odorless, it can be colorless, it can be tasteless, because it's just such a small amount. And the solubility is, again, another issue where you can just drop 3 grains of something into grains of salt into a liquid, and you're never going to figure out what that is. So storage and handling, we talked about cyanide. Novichok agents are great. They are binary poisons. So, or at least most of them are. There's 7 in the groups, but I think 4 of the 7 are binary poisons. That is, you take 2 precursors, you bring them together, and as soon as they contact each other then and mixed up, then you have that. So they're safe to handle until your delivery point, and they're also very stable to store that way, so they don't degrade. Objects were specifically designed for that purpose. Cyanide is a poison that was used in 1982 in the Chicago area. 50% of people can smell it. It smells sort of like almonds. In inhalation, death is within a minute. And with a dermal contact, it takes about 100 milligrams per kilogram. So about 7 grams, which isn't very much. And it about 1.5 milligrams per kilogram, or about 70 milligrams, will kill the average person within about 5 to 10 minutes. So it's strong. I actually was a medical student, pre-med student, when Mary Kellerman came into the hospital in Chicago and died. I was actually worked in the hospital that she did, and I was actually I didn't take her blood at that time, but I was there when she came in and died. So that's part of the reason I know so much about this particular episode. It was pretty horrific. Arsenic is the next most common non-professional use of agents. Blanche Moore, 1988, is a recent case. It's a rodenticide. It's still found in some rodenticides. It is a cumulative poison, which is why it's used so much, because people feel that they have just chronic disease and they don't understand that indeed what's going on here is you're poisoning. And of course, the old arsenic and old lace story is a very famous one. Strychnine is probably the best revenge killer that I know of. This is Sue Morency in 1990, amongst others. You are awake when you die. And what happens is your muscles spasm and contract, and all of them do. And you end up with this terrible, terrible, painful spasm, and you can't breathe. And so you suffocate from it. There are fewer, worse ways to go than that. But it's a very common use one. Again, found in rodenticides in certain places, not so much in the US, but you can go outside, of course, order offline or use the dark web, and you can get kinds of things. In fictional forensics, the problem is that forensic toxicology screens do not pick up exotic chemicals. People think that, you send this thing off to forensics and they're going to find every minor agent known to man, and the answer is no. There's still a lot of signal to noise ratio. They are expensive, very expensive tests, and they will pick up about 30 or 40 of the more common poisons. But unless they know to look specifically for a specific type of agent, then you won't find it. With Skripal, which I keep going back to, the physicians fortunately understand that they were dealing with an organophosphate poison because of the unique symptoms of that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But had they not known that, toxicology screen probably would not have picked it up. And in fact, that is often the case. It's usually clinical suspicion that triggers a specific assay for an exotic poison, and the cost and test takes weeks to months to result. And if you're looking for small amounts like ricin, very difficult to find. So tiny amount it takes. So let's talk about my favorite poison, which is iocane powder. If you've ever seen The Princess Bride, that's the one that they use. And Wesley says, I've developed this, immunity to iocane over the years and stuff, which, obviously is that. I want to put a plea in for that, because that's actually a brilliant way to do it. One, you don't have the restrictions of real agents. Two, you can do what you want. And three, you're not legally liable. Because although I've never seen it happen, there is still the real problem amongst writers and amongst the legal staff of some of the larger houses, is if you use a readily available poison, and there's one that I didn't talk about today specifically because of that, then you could be said to have some vicarious liability if somebody uses that. It's the old, what was it, Fatal? There's a Sharon Stone and Michael Douglas movie that kind of went through that scenario where she was writing books about people and then going out and killing them using that method, and then using that as her cover. So I think it's Fatal Attraction or something like that. But that concept of vicarious reliability is good. And then real problem dosing, right? If you botch the dosing of whatever poison that you're using, you won't kill the person. And then you have to deal with the issues of then if they recover, they remember you, and you can get caught. So that's that. The American Board of Forensic Toxicology is the place you want to go for any real information on these sorts of things. But let's go back now and talk about the Novichok agents because they're so interesting. Novichok is a nerve agent. It has, then it works both in the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. So even if you recover from the central nervous system, the brain functions, you can still end up with permanent numbness. And as far as I know, Skripal actually did have that happen to him, or he's got a lot of numbness still left from years afterwards of the poisoning itself. What was described when Novichok was used, and Novichok, by the way, in Russian means newcomer. So it was a newcomer type of agent. There was an accidental poisoning with Novichoks when they were being developed, and the person who, the scientist that was working on a fumigation hood, and the hood had a leak in it, excuse me. The hood had a leak in it, and so he got a little bit of it. And what happened is he said he saw red and orange circles, which makes sense. He had ringing in his ears, again, also makes perfect sense, and then developed some respiratory difficulty. It was just difficult to breathe. Respiratory muscles are actually interestingly sensitive to nerve agents, and so that's how that happens. The heart also slows down, although usually that's not enough to kill you outright. If it's usually the respiratory paralysis that gets you. And the thing that, as a clinician, that I look for when I'm looking for insecticide or organophosphate poisonings is two things. One, your pupils get very tiny, like pinpoint tiny, and then you start coughing and you have so much mucus come out that it's just like running out of it. We actually call this bronchorrhea, where in that type of thing, you'll see it. I had a patient about 3 weeks ago that I suspected this in, and we suctioned out of her about almost a liter of fluid in 4 minutes out of her lungs. That is what we're talking about. It's a tremendous amount of fluid, and you're literally drowning from the inside is how these work. Along with that, because they're nerve agents, as you would suspect, convulsions are very, very common. Vomiting is very, very common, again, because of the convulsions. And you sweat a great deal. So for us, the combination of pinpoint pupils, the bronchorrhea, and sweating followed by convulsions is an organophosphate poisoning. So then how much does it take of a Novichok agent to kill you with that kind of thing? And you're going to be, the LD50, and then this is just immense, is about, for an average person, would be about 1/100th of a teaspoon is what it would take to kill you. That's the LD50. It's, if you want to know the technical details, it's 0.22 micrograms per kilogram. So it is so little. And being a binary agent, you can handle it, you can store it, you can do whatever, and you just mix it together and drop it into the food, and you're done. It's designed specifically to do that, and it does it very well. And so that's basically what I have for today. Oh, you know what? We can talk about one other thing, I think, if we've got a minute or two. Precursor control. Understand that for a lot of poisons, just like things like meth and stuff, the precursors are followed by DEA, or you have to have certain rights to get into it. So if you're going to use organophosphates or other things that are known poisons, unitary poisons, check into the fact of whether or not you can actually, your person who's going to deliver the poison can actually get a hold of it through a licensed board, or if he can just go up and buy it, or if he buys it off the dark web and stuff, and make sure that you know that. Anything else? Does anybody have any questions?
Dr. Savage, since there's so many of us, I have requested in chat if everyone will go and look in their chat. So that way we don't have to unmute and try to figure out who's speaking. If you could submit your questions in chat, and then Dr. Savage can go from there. The first one that we have is from Karen Sue Walker. She wants to know, could cyanide be delivered in an asthma inhaler?
Yes. It's actually not a bad way to do it. So the problem would be with the inhaler itself. You'd have to decharge the inhaler, right, and then recharge it with the cyanide in it, so it would actually have some pressure on it. So you'd have to figure out a way to repump it up. But if you used a rubber nipple on the bottom, if you didn't notice that, you could actually pump air into it and it would still work. So that would be one way to do it.
Okay, and then Jackie Flom asked, she wants you to talk more about being liable for poison.
Yeah, so if the vicarious liability issue is that if you contribute to death or injury of a second person, wittingly or unwittingly, or not, well, not so much unwittingly, but through reasonable action or gross negligence, contribute to the death, that's called vicarious liability or secondary liability. And you could be held responsible. So the use of a real agent that you could get a hold of, that would be very difficult to detect. And if it could be shown that you are the person that wrote about this or whatever, and you're the source, you wouldn't get probably criminal activity for that, but you might get a tort suit, a civil suit held against you. Now, whether that suit would hold up in court would depend on a whole bunch of things. And because of that, there are two poisons specifically haven't talked about. One of which I'll tell you now, just because it's common knowledge, is the mushroom ones. Because those are readily available, some of the mushroom poisonings would be very difficult to detect, at least initially. And then if you use them, that stuff. But that's widely known information. There are a couple others that are surprising, but if you were to write about them and then put them in your book, and somebody uses them, you could face issues.
Russ has a question. Is there a knockout spray to incapacitate someone?
No. Well, yes and no. So that is what a general gaseous anesthetic like isoflurane is used for. Halothane, isoflurane, those are used as general anesthetics when you go to get an operation. Those are inhalation knockout gases. They work reasonably quickly, but they're not instantaneously. It does take a couple of breaths. I'd say isoflurane, I haven't used that one since I was in training, but it took probably 5 or 6 breaths before someone would pass out. In the old days, chloroform, ether are inhalation poisons that are knockout kind of agents that you can knock somebody out with.
And here I'm thinking about cheap perfume would do the trick, but
well, that could too. But you'd have to be selective. You'd probably get some company riling at you for slander at that point.
D has a question. The person that slipped some cyanide into someone's amaretto sour, where could the person get the cyanide to make someone sick? Where do people get these poisons, by the way?
Dark web. Yeah, dark web is probably the place you want to go if you want to get that kind of stuff and arrange for it. There are some, if you have a friend of a friend who, has a license for certain types of insecticides, you can get them that way. But dark web is where most people get these things.
And I'm going to be stupid. Whenever you're investigating things like this, a poison or so forth, how is it determined? I mean, you said sometimes toxicology reports don't give you details. How else, if I have a cozy mystery sleuth that is trying to solve a murder that was done by poison, what tactics would I use to help solve that mystery?
Okay, so at that point, you as a sleuth are doing very little other than this. Remember that delivery agents how Skripal actually got caught was when they did the delivery of the drug, they spilled a little bit also, I think, onto some surface. I think it was a table or something like that. Don't hold me to that. And they were able to pick up some of the pure poison off the surfaces that they had eaten on or had been around at that point. And in fact, I believe one of the early EMTs was also somebody in the investigation or in the EMT section was also hospitalized briefly for mild exposure to the agent. Now, whether it was directly because they had touched the same surface or not, no, I don't think anybody, that information, as I know, was never released. But that person wasn't terminally sick. He just got kind of ill for a little bit.
So basically, if my sleuth has to solve something, they've got to solve it by the crook making a mistake, or someone inadvertently being a victim that wasn't intended on it, or there's some kind of paper trail or something that would lead.
Correct. Yeah. So what it would be is you have a death. You have a death that does not look like natural causes. Now, obviously, organophosphate poisoning, like the Novichok agents and others, insecticides, strychnine, all that sort of stuff, to us as doctors, obviously, are not common natural deaths. We're pretty good at recognizing those sorts of things. And so because there's a thing called toxidromes that we use and we're trained in, all emergency physicians in the US are trained in to recognize. And we can pick up clinical symptoms, which will then lead us down to the class of compound that is probably going to be used. Some of the other ones, though, it's if they're really potent, the problem is detecting them, even if the person dies from it. If you're using a Novichok agent, if you're using a dark web insecticide that we're not looking for, if you're using ricin in particular, really tough to detect, even if you know it's an agent thereafter. So knowing it and proving it, again, tend to be two different issues. So that's where we're at.
Based on that, does the setting of where you're trying to solve the mystery come into play? With cozy mysteries, everything is usually in small towns.
Right. So if you have a hidden identity, so again, remember, for most of these things, the motives have to be fairly strong if they're professional killings. You're a defecting FSB agent, you're a high-level diplomat with a lot of secrets to tell and that you don't want to get out, then they're going to go that way. For the most common part for Mary Kellerman and that crazy person aside are insurance fraud. So you look immediately at beneficiaries and relatives that have a grudge or something to gain. Who's got something to gain? So for a cozy mystery person, that's where I would go. In particular, look for some sort of insurance thing or some sort of jealousy, a romantic interest, something like that.
Okay, so Linda McPherson has a question. If the victim is taking the medication such as insulin, a blood thinner, cholesterol, what poisons or other meds would have a deadly reaction?
Oh, okay. Very good question. So yes, there are drug interactions. In fact, our computer systems, when we order drugs now, automatically flag any potential adverse reactions between two drugs being together, because obviously the number of potential drugs versus interactions are trillions, and there's no human that could know them all. For blood thinners, if you have a person who is on a blood thinner, and they have any type of physical trauma that's significant, it can be particularly head trauma. It can be an absolute nightmare to deal with and can be fatal. In fact, we have protocols now for people who are on Eliquis and those sorts of blood thinners with head trauma. They automatically go to the trauma resuscitation room and get a full blown trauma workup, because subdural hemorrhages and that sort of stuff in the face of when you cannot coagulate are very difficult. And I've had dozens and dozens of cases where seemingly minor things like nosebleeds or a laceration on the elbow or whatever was just a nightmare to try to control the bleeding from. So that's one. What's another common drug-drug interaction? Diabetics. There are a number of agents that, like sulfonylureas, that if they're on insulin, if you give them a sulfonylurea, it'll drop their blood sugar to 0 for, days. That's one where you have to, when we see those drugs, those people are automatically hospitalized and put on sugar drips, basically D5 drips. Anything else?
Yeah, Larry has a couple of questions. First of all, he wants to know what your username and login is for the dark web, because he would like to borrow it. And other than that, he has a question about, what average PD test for poison with a dead body? What would average his topo again, Larry. What average PD test for poison with a dead body? What is the normal procedure?
Oh, okay. So the first thing is obviously all the samples are collected at autopsy. The sample that's usually the most useful is the liver, because that's where a lot of the poisons get stored and concentrated before they take final action in the body. So, but it'll be liver, urine, vitreous humor, blood, obviously blood and serum, urine, all that kind of stuff. So they'll get the samples, but the liver is the one generally they're most interested in. And they send the samples off to the lab, and their chain of custody has to be maintained, obviously. And then they run their standard tests. There's no real uniform. I'm going to say this, it's kind of hard. There is some variation amongst jurisdictions and places about what specific forensic battery is used. And there's variations. If you're doing something in Buffalo Breath, Montana, you're not going to get the same standard toxicology screen that you're going to get in, Los Angeles County. It's just, money has a thing to do here as well. And it would depend on suspicion, et cetera, et cetera. So those will vary a little bit.
Well, you mentioned the key word because it was a two-part question by Larry. He wanted to know, would they only check if it was suspicious?
No, I'm sorry. Yes, there is a standard toxicology screen that's run on any autopsy. The reason for doing an autopsy in the first place is because the death is suspicious. So, I've signed, dozens and dozens of death certificates, and the body is released directly to the family without the coroner. Once they talk to the coroner's office, and they release the body if the death is not suspicious, which is the usual, standard thing, and 99% of the time. But if I have a question, then I bring that to the thing, and then they to the coroner on the first call to notify them of the death. And then I say, this is not looking good. Let's do this. And they, invariably take it. They'll take the body. Anybody who dies who is probably under the age of 50, very rarely do we not get those consigned by them, because again, that's a bit unusual for a person to die of natural causes under the age of 50, unless they have multiple other diseases, which I would know clinically. But any death that I cannot explain as an emergency physician, or I don't feel comfortable with, generally the coroners are going to take them and do their assessments.
Okay, so Barbara Christopher wants to switch gears and talk about, hold on a second. My chat in the box just moved, and wants to talk about herbs. Her question is I know that cloves thin blood, but are there any other herbs that can cause enough of a reaction to cause death? Yeah,
probably the one that's the most interesting for me anyway is foxglove. foxglove is also known as digitalis. Digitalis is a drug that when I first started training 30 years ago, we actually used on a moderately regular basis for heart issues. So it was a very common drug. And I had a patient one time whose job in the 1940s was I think it was Upjohn at the time. Upjohn would send him a brass leaf, and then he would collect foxglove or digitalis leaves of that particular size and send them in and get a certain fee. And then the company would actually, the prescriptions, I've actually seen an old time prescription, the prescription say, 1/2 or 1 whole leaf of digitalis daily. And that's how the drug was administered. The most interesting thing about that is that if you take the whole leaf, nobody ever died from the digitalis because it has so many other components in it that you got too sick to take anymore. So the company purifies the drug, and now we take tablets. Now it becomes a very big issue of digitalis toxicity. So now we have to order tests on a regular basis to monitor the drug levels. So the drug company makes their money by extracting it. The labs make their money by having to monitor it. And then 20 years later, they come out with a toxin an antitoxin at $10,000 a dose to cure you from a poisoning from a drug that if you take the actual herb, you can't die from. So it was a really interesting use of capitalism as far as that goes. So dig would be my first choice. If you could get enough of that concentrated into somebody, you can still kill them.
Well, here's something that Karen Sue Walker asked, and I thought this was kind of interesting because I'm like, if it's true, I may use it. It says, I heard that eye drops can kill someone if put in their drink over a few days. Do you know if this would likely turn up as in a tox screen without someone realizing it was likely the source of poisoning?
They're probably talking about atropine. I suspect that would be the most likely candidate off the top of my head. Would that work?
I think it's Visine. There is a kind of Visine.
Oh, the tetrahydrolazine?
Yeah, there we go.
It would be hard not to detect that on clinical grounds. Because it's a sympathomimetic, if it's going to do enough to kill you, the toxidrome would be pretty readily apparent. Now, it might not be hydralazine that we would look for initially in terms of symptoms, but it certainly would be in terms of suspecting that there's something going on in that class of drugs. And as long as we go down the class, then yeah, they're going to probably be testing for tetrahydrozoline because that's a very common sympathomimetic, as are all the decongestants for cold and cough and stuff, the ephedrins and that sort of stuff. So those assays would be looked at specifically.
Can you repeat that because you went away for a while?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I apologize. The tetrahydrozoline would probably be suspected on clinical grounds because it causes a very specific and unusual type of poisoning. And in addition to that, once that's the more common sympathomimetic agent. So like ephedrine, which is used in a lot of the cold medicines, tetrahydrozoline, which is used in the eye medicines, would almost certainly be on any class sympathomimetic screen. And that's because of the clinics, we would look for that specific one. That would probably show up.
Okay, so this is a movie-related question. Nathan asked it. He says that when you describe symptoms, it makes him think about movie scenes where a person starts bleeding out of their tear ducts and out of their ears. Can those symptoms actually happen, or is that just fiction? And what substances would cause bleeding symptoms like that?
Okay, none, not unless there's trauma. So even an overdose of Coumadin, which is a very powerful drug like that, spontaneous bleeding like that, you're not out of the eyes and ears isn't going to happen. The ears, it's not going to happen because the tympanic membrane is going to hold back any blood that would be there. Where you're going to see the bleeding is actually in the stool. internal bleeding in the gut is typically where we see most of that type of bleeding. And of course, if you have any cuts, lacerations, or abrasions and stuff, they're going to bleed more commonly. But GI bleeding is usually where it happens for those, and that's really not so amenable to screen and movie going public.
Okay, well, Nathan apparently dropped out and came back in. So Nathan, the answer to your question is no. It's purely fictitious. Jackie has made a question. She's read that there's been a woman who has killed 2 of her husbands with antifreeze and was caught when she tried to do it a 3rd time. But the news stories never said how she managed to fool those people to drink it and how she got caught.
Okay, so her problem is, again, the same thing of developing a pattern once you look into a suspicious death. So ethylene glycol is a common.
You went away.
Oh, shoot, come on. I'm
No,
back
you
again?
didn't.
All right. Sorry, I think we're having a solar flare right now, and that's why. No, seriously, I think that's what's causing the disruption to communications, because we used to have this at Mission Control once in a while. So the ethylene glycol antifreeze is sweet, so it can be used in baked goods and stuff, or in any mixed drink. It can be used because it's a strong sweetener. If you can remove the fluorescein in it, which is the stuff that makes it glow, that's all the better. If you can get a more pure form of it, than you would find in typical antifreeze. But yes, I have seen several deaths over my career from antifreeze. But again,
Wow.
yeah, it's clinically not apparent at first because it has such vague symptoms. But toward the end, when you see this immense acidosis, and interestingly enough, what happens is that the urine will discolor because it concentrates the fluorescein, and the urine begins to glow in the dark. And then we go, oh, okay, that's what this is.
Oh.
So that happened. That can
Oh,
happen.
that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you use a UV light on a person who's gotten antifreeze, you can usually detect that they have that they've been poisoned with that.
Okay, anyone else have any questions? Because I don't see anything in the chat, and it is 11:11 according to my Central Time Zone.
And I am assuming that I have one thing, Dr. Savage. I understand that it sounds to me like if you're going to kill someone by poisoning, your best bet is to do it where there is a rural hospital as opposed to a big city hospital.
Correct. The delay in onset, the expectations are just different, right? And the availability of resources rapidly is the issue. So,
well, I want to thank you very much. This has been fabulous. I mean,
Okay.
I think we've gotten lots of really good ideas.
Hold on, one question.
Yeah.
I want Phyllis to ask her. She's asking about, and I've never heard of this. What about bluing? Can you still purchase? And what is?
Oh, there's a good one.
Yeah, what is bluing? I'm not familiar with it.
bluing is an agent, Lynn, that is used in laundry things, typically to brighten whites. It turns out that in the human ocular spectrum, that dirt and everything tend to be sort of orange and brown. Blue counteracts that. The color blue counteracts that, and so it makes whiters look whiter. Whites look whiter. Yeah, whites look whiter. And so that's why it's used. And yes, it is still commercially available, but what I don't know is a lot of formulations of these types of things have changed over the years. So I don't know if the new current bluing that you could buy off the, some standard internet laundry place would have the ingredients that you're looking for to cause poisoning like it would have 1940, 1950 range. Off the top of my head, that one, I don't know. I don't look at bluing.
All right. Well, I hate to cut it off, but we really do need to move on, especially because we have some Malice business that we need to take care of. So thank you so much. Can we have your slide presentation to put on our website?
Sure. I'll send that to Lynn here in a minute.
Excellent. And then I will post this once the meeting is over with. Jackie, do you want me to discontinue the live broadcast and
I
record?
do. Yes, please cut off the Facebook Live. I was about to say that. And thank you so much, and goodbye to our guests. Please come and visit us again. We loved having you.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate it very much, and enjoyed talking to you all. Pleasure.
All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye. All right.